All right, does anyone know what ECMAScript version we're on currently? 9, German for no. Yeah, why does ECMAScript stand out so much then? If you look at tutorials, you'll never find Introduction to ES7, oh, you might. There's far fewer of them than the ES6. So why was ES6 such a big deal? It's the new standard, meaning we've been using JavaScript for a while at the point when this came out, or when I say we, I mean the people before us, the collective we. They were given a new set of tools to say, hey, your JavaScript works, but it could work better. Here are the tools to do that. They're now built into the language. And don't worry, everything you've been using, like var, still works, but you're going to want to start using these new standards because they're way better, and you'll see why. So let's start off with the first one, let and const. Before let and const, what were the two scopes we had for variables? Global and local, also known as function scoping. When let and const came out, what was the third type of scoping that was introduced? You may hear it referred to as bracket scoping or lexical scoping. So this is the let and const scope. This is the var scope. Or local is the var scope, I should say. Global applies to both. Global means I declared it outside of a function, so the whole program knows about it. That works for let, const, or var. But let's do a quick example here to see what is what. So if I were to declare a variable age, would I use let or const to define this? Why let? Because I want to let it change when they grow older. Great. And if I was going to do something like a social security number, const, I don't think those change. Sorry if this is yours, it's a guess. 358, I don't know when that would have been. Okay, so what scope are both these variables in currently? Currently, these are both globally scoped variables. How do we know they're globally scoped? Yeah, there's no brackets here, there's no function here. We opened up a JavaScript page and said, here's your variables. They are global to our program. Okay, so if I have a function then, my function, and I said const name equals Steve, what is Steve's scoping now? Bracket scope. Which brackets does it live inside of? The function brackets. Cool. All right, well, let's make this a step further in difficulty. If 2 equals 2, then declare a variable called name and set it equal to the string Steve. All right, what is name scoping now? Right, and it's still bracket scope, right? By putting an if statement, it doesn't change its scoping, it changed where it's scoped to. So now, if I were to console log name here, would it work? Would it? Ooh, I want to test it. My function. Who votes we see Steve? I saw some hesitance almost. Yeah, we won't see Steve. Steve is lost by line 11, fortunately. We get a big old error that says name is not defined. But what if I change this to var? Will I see Steve or will I see the same error? You're starting to learn my methods. Yes, Steve. So this teaches us something very important in the differences between var and let and const. If I declare var in a function, it lives in that entire function, regardless of where it was declared. So even if it's inside of another set of curly brackets, the whole function knows about it. However, if I use const or let, we are now confined to the nearest set of brackets. It will only live here. And so this will break. Steve doesn't exist at this point. Well, what if I only wanted to make Steve the assignment of name if 2 equals 2? Otherwise, I'd make him equal to Joe. Where would I have to declare this variable to make this work? I could either go outside the function, make it global, like that. But then after this function is over, that's still sitting in global space. And maybe I want to use that variable later. So where inside the function could I declare it so that this console log works? Right before the console log, but what if in here is still, I still want to do this? Yeah, right before the statement, I can say let name. And then if 2 equals 2, great, then name equals Steve. But if 2 is not equal to 2 for some strange event, name should equal Joe. So when I run this program, will I see undefined, Steve, or Joe? How many vote Steve? How many vote undefined? How many vote Joe? We have a winner for those who said Joe. Why does it say Joe? I changed something, didn't I? I said if 2 is not equal to 2, which is false. So name won't be assigned Steve, it'll be assigned Joe, but either way, even without this line here, name is still defined, so we won't get a reference error, we'll just get undefined. Program didn't break because it found the variable we were referencing, we just didn't assign it to any value. And that is the gist of let and const. Those are the big parts. This one should never change, constant. Let can change, and they are both bracket scoped. It's the nearest set of brackets that they were declared in. So since we declared this in this set here, it exists in this set as well, but not vice versa. It doesn't go up, it just goes down into, just like anything in this function could look outside the function. I can console log age, and the function will first look at itself. Do I have a variable called age? No. Looks globally. Is there a variable called age? Yes. Great. Console log it. So we'll get undefined and 20 for our age. Any questions on let const and their scoping? Cool. Oh, that wasn't a very long pause. 1, 2, 3. Cool. Just making sure. Sorry, I just started a Red Bull, so I might start talking faster. Comment that out. And we're good to go on to the next feature of ES6. Arrow functions. Has anyone heard of arrow functions, or more aptly named fat arrow functions? What do they look like? They look like that. So a pair of equal signs and then a greater than symbol. As long as you put a set of parentheses before that, you've got a function. That is a function. It's an anonymous function because it doesn't have a name, but it's a function. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a function in pre-ES6 syntax, and then we're going to convert it to an arrow function. One thing to note about arrow functions, they are not to replace this word. They do not replace this word. You still want to use this word a lot of the time. It's still important. So it's not like let and const where these overwrote var and we don't use var anymore. When it comes to arrow functions, we now have 2 options. We have the function keyword and we also have arrows. So let's do a function expression. How do you create a function with as a function expression? What does that mean? What's the keyword I start off with? It's not function, that's a declaration. Const variable name equals a function, right? So const my function equals a function that maybe takes some text and it will console log that text. It's very cool. I will then say my function hello. We'll make sure it works. It did not work. My function has already been declared. What does that mean? That's pretty straightforward. I have not been very original. Let's say my other function. Aha. We win. And make sure we get hello. Okay, so we get a hello. Is there any questions on function expressions, how they're set up? I know usually we declare them with the function keyword, but whenever you're doing an arrow function, it's always an expression. Or anonymous, but always an expression. Okay, so let's change this to an arrow function to notice the syntax difference, because functionally it will work the same in this context. So the first thing that happens, one, get rid of the function word. Okay. Step number one, get rid of the function word. Step number two, add an arrow on the other side of the parenthesis. Okay, arrow added. We got a fat arrow function. Does it work? Okay, let's prove that the syntax makes sense to the computer. Hey, it works. So we get rid of the function word as long as we add an arrow after the set of the parentheses, it's still a function. What's hard to see about this? Like, how do we know it's a function? The arrow, which is a lot harder to see than the function keyword. So a lot of people will be like, if you're writing a function for function purposes, still use the function word. So when I read your code, I see function. There's certain situations where you have to use the function keyword, but there is a lot of times where a fat arrow function makes things a lot easier to read, or a lot easier to type out, and we'll use them all the time. There's a few more rules. It's not as simple as this, unfortunately. When there is a fat arrow function involved, if there is only one argument, you don't need the parentheses around your parameters. If there's only one parameter, I don't need parentheses, the function will still work. However, if I had another parameter, notice my console breaks, or my code breaks. It's because now, with more than one parameter, you do need parentheses. Why did they introduce that? I don't know, but they did, so we get to work with it. So other rules. If there is only one parameter, you do not need parentheses around them. So we'll strip this down all the way to where it should be, like that. So where will you start using this immediately? Where will arrow functions start making sense? Anonymous functions are a huge one. What's a method we've used in DOM manipulation that requires an anonymous or named function? Add event listener. So I'm going to make this up, my form. I didn't grab it, just using it because I can. Add event listener. We're going to add a submit event to this make-believe form. And then we'd have to write function parentheses curly brackets. We don't have to. We can just say parentheses, fat arrow, curly brackets. Same thing. They're both anonymous functions. This one's just missing the function word. How many less letters is that to type? Well, this is 8 letters, so 6 less letters. I guess we're lazy. We just want to put this instead. But no, and you'll get you'll begin liking these more and more, because what's another rule about arrow functions? If there's only one parameter, you do not need parentheses. Oh, so my event can just kind of be floating there, and that works just fine. It's a little shock on the system when you're first seeing it, but you'll start seeing more and more code that looks just like this, and eventually be just fine with it. All right, so here's a common example. Now you can have parentheses if there's one. That's optional. It won't break it if you keep them there for your own purposes. But so let's do one test on this. I'm going to have somebody help. And I'm going to make it even harder. I'm going to use a function declaration. I'm going to call this add stuff together. That takes an x and a y, returns x plus y. Random name picking machine, which is really a paper here that I and landed on an empty seat. What does that mean? I think that means I get to choose. Let's try Moroni. I don't think I'm calling you. Moroni, I would like to change this to an arrow function. I'll just redeclare it down here so we can look at the two side by side. But how would I make that same function but as an arrow function? I'm very good at literally typing what you say. So. Oh, we're so close. We're missing two things. What are we missing? Okay, first, this is a variable or a function expression, so we have to say const. Yeah, there we go. So very close. But you have to remember it's a function expression always, so we have to declare it as a variable and set it equal to our function. Yeah. Will it break if I try to use the function word here? Yes. You cannot have the function word and the arrow in the same. It's two different types of functions. It won't let you do that. There is a huge but minute, that's oxymoron. There is a big difference between the arrow and the function keyword, which we'll get to later. It's all about how the this keyword works. But just kind of to a high level right now, if you need to use the keyword this, you're going to use this. You're going to use a function declaration. Otherwise, you can use an arrow because that doesn't get its own this. But that's neither here nor there. We'll get there. Arrow functions are not hoisted. Yes, because they're always expressions. Right, so this does the same thing these two functions do. We call them the same way. The only difference is the syntax we use to declare them and how the keyword this is situated. I'm going to comment this out so it doesn't break. Arrow functions. Get rid of the function keyword, add an arrow. You can get rid of the parentheses if you want. And then you got an arrow function. Cool. Stop me if you got questions. I'm going to keep moving along helpfully here.
Just reading the notes. There another thing where if you just have one statement with your function?
Yeah, okay. You have a point there, sir. Yeah, what Carlos is saying, there's one more mechanism of the arrow. Yeah, I think it's worth going over right now. So with the arrow, we don't necessarily even have to say return. The arrow has a built-in implicit return statement in the background that returns for you. But as soon as you say arrow curly brackets, you're saying don't return. I will return when I'm ready to. But this is a really simple statement, right? All we want this function to do is return this one statement. When it's this simple, we don't need these curly brackets. We don't need the return statement. We can just do that. And it does the same thing. Because this has an implicit return. If it doesn't hit a set of curly brackets, it means I will return what's immediately to the right here. Which makes it even less like, wait, are these brackets scoped? Yeah. If we're declaring, but if you're declaring variables, you're going to have to open up a function, right? There's no way to say, and return var x equals 10, and then also return x plus 10. Like, it doesn't know what we're saying. It has to be one statement. And right here, we have two statements. So in this situation, we'd have to wrap them in function curly brackets and declare them on their own lines with their own return. But if it's one statement, sure, x plus y. So I'll add that to the other rules. Arrows get an automatic implicit return as long as they are not followed by a set of curly brackets. Thank you, Carlos. Okay. So feel free to experiment with these. Start using arrow functions. I'm going to give you an exercise that has you create them, and change some regular functions into arrows. But the best practice is just in your own programs. Find times to do that. Remember, they're not hoisted though, so I cannot call it up here because it only exists as of line 43. Template literals. We've seen these. What are these? What are template literals? Yeah, it's another way to make a string, backticks. So this is a bit of a review, but let's say this, const first name equals Harry, last name equals Malfoy. Ha, you thought I was going to say Potter. And I want to say hello plus fname plus space plus lname plus I'm happy about it, and C. Add stuff together has already been declared. Oh, I'm just causing myself problems. Hello, Harry Malfoy. Okay, so how can I write this with backticks? He wants to give it a shot. And I'm jumping right into this because we've already used them, but this is also kind of review. So backticks, how do I create the same string? Hello, $, curly brackets, fname, space, $, curly brackets, lname, exclamation point. What's that? So I have the backtick ending here and starting here, just like these double quotes, and start there. I know it ends here, but officially it ends here. No, we should be just fine on both of these. We should see it print out the same way on both. Yeah. Now, what if I wanted to say hello, new line, Harry Malfoy? How would I do that here on the first example? No, yes, I have to escape and say create a new line. And now that first one, hello, Harry Malfoy. But how do I do that with a template literal? Do I have to put in an escape sequence like this, a new line? No, the template knows about it. So I can just say, put it right about there. Oh, it really moved it over. So that's on the same. It still moved it over, but I'm not too concerned about it. There we go. Oh, that's why they're all flipped over. If they was on the right line, they'd be set up. But just to show you, template literals keep track of new lines for you. In the background, it's doing this for you every time you hit enter, so you don't have to worry about it. Formatting strings has never been more easy or fun. So you'll often see stuff like that, where I can just write stuff in here with variables, with as long as backticks surround it all, it'll format exactly like that. Hello, Harry Malfoy. It even kept track of the tabbing, right? And this one doesn't, unless I say tab it over a couple times. Now I've added 5 tabs to that. So the first one gets this long tab, and then a new line, first name, last name. This one just automatically read, hey, I'm 2 tabs over, tab them over twice, print the message. So backticks is the preferred way to concatenate strings, what have you. Just, I'd use them from now on. So you don't have to do this. This is such a pain. Cool. Any questions with template literals? Yeah, I think that's from way before. Yep, here it is. That's just me not keeping track of what I'm doing again. Okay. Template literals, yay. And we'll look at a really cool example of template literals here shortly. Rest and spread. 2 different operators. So we'll cover rest first and then spread. Rest and spread, they're 2 operators that use the same syntax, not to confuse you. Both of these are denoted by ... That is a rest operator. That is a spread operator. So how do we know which is which? It's all about where you use it. You can only use the rest operator in one situation. Everywhere else, it's a spread operator. So that's how they are able to use the same syntax for both. So the rest operator can only be used in or as a function parameter. What does that mean? If I have a function such as find max number, and I would like this function to be able to take any amount of numbers. The user gives me 10 numbers and I'm supposed to give them the largest one. How do I build that capability as a function parameter? Like they might send me 2, they might give me 5. And I can't write a version of the function for each one. So instead of just saying like num1, num2, num3, and hopefully they give me all 3, I can say ... nums. Now, what this allows them to do is give me as many numbers as I want. And on this line, it'll be an array of all the numbers they gave me. It automatically takes all the things they gave me and puts it in an array and calls it nums. Let's do that. Let's console.log nums and then call this function find max number, and we'll pass in free. I can't get spaces in there, that'll break. And we'll call this function. What did I do now? Expected end, oh, yep, look at that, left those dots sitting out there for anyone. Cool. So I took all my numbers and gathered them into an array. So this is the thing I wish they would have called this, not the rest operator, but the gather operator. I think it makes semantically more sense. I didn't get that choice though, so it is rest. But when you hear rest, think gather, because it gathers an innumerable amount of parameters and turns them into an array. Yep, it's the name of the parameter. So as long as I say ... and then a word here, that's what this array will be called inside the function. So nums is this array. Oops, this array of numbers I passed in. Any questions on gather, aka rest? What's that? Oh yeah. You'll start working on it. Nothing will work, and then you'll be like, okay, questions. Yeah. So rest is useful. You won't find yourself needing it all too often because usually your functions have very preset parameters. There's very few situations where you need to be give me anything, I'll figure it out. But spread is extremely useful. And spread is when you see ... outside of function parameter parenthesis. So if you see this syntax anywhere outside of a function parameter, it's a spread operator. Now this one is named with what it does. It takes a complex data type and spreads out its contents. What are the complex data types? Objects and arrays. They're both things that hold other things. So let's say I have my const, my array equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I have this const other array equals 6, 7, 8, 9. What JavaScript method do we know of so far that could add these two arrays together? And so we get one array that says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Concat. Yeah, we can say my or other array. Nope, I was right the first time. My array.concat, add on this other array. And when we run this, I get this one big array. Well, now I have another option. I can say console.log my array. Actually, no. Yeah. We're going to say console.log a new array, and this new array should have all the contents of my first array and all of the contents of my other array. All right, so I declared a new array here, and I'm filling it in with all the other array contents. I'm spreading the contents of one box into another box. So I'll run this again now. I get all the way the same.
Can you read the other version?
Yeah, the concat. Now, you cannot spill the contents of an array into an object, and you can't spill the contents of an object into an array. But you can spread object contents into another object. You can spread array contents into another array, no problem. What does that mean? Let's look at an object. Person has a name of Rick. And then later, let's say the user logs in on our site, they give us their name, and this is what our data looks like in our database. We have a user. I'll change this name to user. We have a new user named Rick. Well, he goes to his profile page, enters some information, says, hey, my age is 70. And we need to update this object. We need to add this property to it. Well, what I can do is declare, in a roundabout way, updated user, and say have everything from the user object and also everything from the user's age. And now we have a new object with the contents of both. Let's see if Node handles this. Node used to blow up when you do this, but it works now. So I can spread objects into objects, I can spread arrays into arrays, but I can't mix and match. Just letting some time pass to see if there's any questions that come out.
So when you express data of two arrays to one video, should you consider this way? You want to use this kind of combined array in the future.
Use the combined array in the future.
How are you going to find this combined array in the future?
Then I'd save it. I'd say, const updated array or larger array equals a new array. It's a new array because I said, hey, new array brackets. And what's in the array? The contents of these two. At this point, has these two arrays been changed at all? No. Fortunately enough, the spread does not break or change these arrays. It just copies all the contents and spills it into a new box. We'll be using this syntax in every single program we write in React.
I was trying to understand. Don't say this in array, so how can you use it?
Yeah. Cool.
And the second question is, array as a array can
So you can spread objects into an array. You can't, or you can spread like an array of objects into another array, because you're just saying all the objects that are in this box, put them in this box. But I can't say take the name and age out of this object box and put them in this array box. I can't do that. Does that make sense? I'm getting some blank stares, so I'm concerned. I have an array of objects like so. And let's say each of these just have a title. I am an object. So I got 3 objects in this array, and I'd like to spread them into a new array of objects, because this new array of objects has a new title. This one has a title, I am new. But then after this object, I would like these 3 objects as well. What would I have to write here to get these 3 objects copied into this array? Dot, 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 what? Yeah, array of objects. Spelled correctly. So now, of object. Oh man, array of object. That's awful. So now I'm saying, now how many items will be in the new array of objects? 4. It has this new one at the first, and then these 3 following right after. I've spread them into it. Now what I can't do is this. I can't say spread this object's insides into this array, because now I'm trying to put a key value pair here. I'm literally trying to type title equals I am an object. And arrays don't like that syntax, usually. It's got to be full object. Cool. That's the spread and rest. 2 more. Destructuring and default parameters. Rest assured, we'll cover this all again in a wider sense, but 2 more features to go over. Destructuring, we saw this very briefly this morning, but let's look at an example of where this would be useful. Let's say in my website, I have a user object that keeps track of the user's username. Cool guy. Whether he is logged in, true. Maybe his ID that he's saved under in the database. So we got this user object, and this is very, very normal inside of a React application. You got this object, you're passing it all around your application because you want to know who your user is. You want to display their username on each page. But if I wanted to console log the username, what would I have to write? User.username, cool. If I wanted to console log the is logged in, what would I have to write? Cool. And I think we're getting the point. If I wanted to console log the ID, I'd have to say user._ID. This is fine if I'm doing this on one page, I don't mind it, but most likely you're going to be typing this about 100 times throughout your site. And the fact that you have to say user dot can be annoying. Later you'll find the word props to start getting annoying. So how could we just get these kind of saved as variables? Well, the long-handed way that we used to have to do it is I could say const username equals user.username. And now I can just say username whenever I want to reference their username, right? Are you following with this? Okay. Which again will work, maybe a step in the right direction, but still quite redundant. Trying to say user.user.user. So instead, we can declare all of these as variables by pulling them out of this object, pulling a reference out of this object for each of them. And that's referred to as destructuring. So the way that works is you say const, you're going to declare a variable, but what you declare is actually empty object, well, object brackets, and set it equal to the object you're destructuring, so user. Now, whatever keys I put inside of these brackets, JavaScript will automatically declare as variables and set them equal to the key's value. So essentially doing this for us. Actually, exactly doing this for us. So in here, I'll say I would like the username, the is logged in boolean, and the ID. And now I'll just console.log username. Get that helpful little landmark out of the way. And user has already been declared. Oh man, we're getting there. Now all this is going to break. Okay. Just so we don't run into any more of these. Cool guy. So this is the object destructuring syntax. You declare const object brackets with variables inside equals the object we want to get those variables from. Now this has to match exactly what we're pulling from it. So if I said const username and I console log that, what would we guess this will be? Yeah, undefined. But as soon as we're saying, no, look in the object for something called this and name it for me as a variable, now it knows what we're talking about. So this is destructuring objects, the most likely data type that you'll be destructuring, but this works as well for arrays. You can destructure arrays. What is the big difference between arrays and objects, though, if you had to slim it down to that?
Object or description.
Cool. Oh no. We're getting there. Yes, okay. Yeah, so objects have more description. How are objects and arrays ordered? What are the difference with their ordering?
Objects are unordered.
Objects are unordered. They don't have order, but arrays, order is very important. You know, indexing, 0, 1 through however many items you have. So because order is important in arrays, destructuring arrays in order is important. It only works that way. Objects, I don't have to have it in this order. I could say destructure the ID, the username, and is logged in. It will still work because this isn't saved in any particular order. But if I have an array, let's say of fruit, apple, banana. No. Oh, nope, that was right, huh? Okay. Rock. Then I would like to get these three variables out using destructuring. So just like object destruction, where we start with object arrays, with array destructuring, I'll say const empty array brackets equals fruits. But in this case, regardless of what I call it, I'll call this one item 1, item 2, item 3. Who wants to take a guess? When I console log item 2, what will it be? Banana, yes, because ordering counts. So with objects, I don't care about the order, but I have to use the exact word of what they're called on the inside. With arrays, I can call them anything, and they will represent the item at that index number. So item 2 will be banana. Item 1 will be apple. If I call item 1 banana, it really means apple. So don't do that. Let's console log that and make sure we see banana. Cool guy banana. Not intentional. Okay, any questions with array or object destructuring right now? We'll see it again. Structuring object. And this is destructuring array. Right? Okay. We're almost there. Got one more. Trying to give these nice landmarks to go by. Oh goodness. Destructuring. rest operator, spread operator. Okay. So the last one we have is default parameters. And this is pretty straightforward. Where is the only place we have parameters? Functions, cool. Let's go back to the classic example. There's nothing here. Okay. So we'll say function sum should take an x and a y and return x plus y. But we can't trust our users. As much as we'd like to, someone's going to use your site in a way that it was not intended. It will happen. So how do we account for that? What if they pass in 4? What is this function going to return? Who guesses undefined? I like this game. Who guesses 4? 0, not a number, null, blows up. Let's see. What is x plus no y value? Because we're not passing in a second argument here. It is not a number. Because a number plus something that's not a number equals not a number. Well, this kind of stinks because if this were in a live program, the user just broke it by only giving me one number. So what I can do is I can say, if they don't give me a parameter, this is the default value, so the function still runs. And you can write this right in the parameters. So if they don't give me an x, make x 10. If they don't give me a y, y should be 5. So my question now, when I run this function, instead of saying not a number, what will we see? 9? Is that German for no? Yeah, we're going to see 9. Why 9? Why not 15 or 14? I passed in my first argument, so the default got overridden. Only set x equal to 10 if I don't give you a first argument. I gave him a first argument, so x is 4. Then it checks for the second, doesn't see it, so it's like, well, here's your default. Let's make it 5. 4 plus 5 gives us 9. And that's all default parameters are. One of those things you may not use as often, but every once in a while you'll see this syntax. Just know that you can do this. And that is the basics of the ES6 library. These are the new features that came out that made ES6 such a big deal. There's one other one, import and export, which we'll get to with React, which came out before, like around the same time as require for Node. So we can kind of use them interchangeably once we're using heftier Node applications. But we'll cover that when we get to that point, because import and export don't work in Node by themselves. Can't say this, unfortunately. Okay, so just to recap, we hit let and const again. We hit fat arrow functions. We hit template literals, rest and spread, destructuring for objects and arrays, and default parameters. So I'll put these notes out, and then there are some exercises to get practice with them, as always. This is the first one. This one's to practice let const arrow function, default arguments, which is default parameters, and template literals. So you'll go through this. Like task 1, rewrite. Ooh, actually, let's not do this yet. We haven't gone over higher order methods. That's fine. I don't want to throw that at you yet. We're hitting those Wednesday, so close enough. But this one, let's see. Rest and spread. Hey, I got good news for you. I'm not going to give you these exercises right now. We got to go over higher order methods first. So this was the big reveal to ES6 going forward. Perfect. That actually gives us a bit more time on stuff today. Because I'm assuming a lot of you would like some work time on business time, especially, since we'd like to have that done Wednesday. So Instead, we'll just give you the debugging assignment that we have for the day, and after that, the rest of the day will just be work time. And tomorrow as well, tomorrow afternoon, we'll try to give you 2 to 3 hours to work on it if you don't get it done tonight. Great, that does give us a lot more time today. I'll pass these out as notes as soon as we're done here. Let me stop the